Hey, good afternoon. Carl Rominger here, broadcasting live from Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. If you read my Facebook post, I lied. We're not actually going to have the president on to talk about his long-form birth certificate. So those of you who thought I was going to, birth the birther movement or whatever, that's not going to happen today. 540-0580, 540-0580. Call in with your legal questions. I mean, obviously, if you want to ask about something political, since we're in D.C., we might as well field those calls today as well. 540-0580. Call in and get your calls put on live here on the air, and we'll go from there. Let's see. I had a jury trial. Did I get a chance to report on that already? I think I did. That the jury made the right decision in that one. Also, if you want to know what other times and places you can listen to our show, you go to weekendappointment.com. Mainly, the biggest thing is we have the podcast there of past shows. So if you want to catch up, we've got a great one there. We've got a lot of compliments on with Paul Chase, who's our foreclosure prevention specialist. And Paul spent half an hour with me on a podcast a few weeks ago, which we have posted on weekendappointment.com, which you can also get on WHP580.com, where he talks in the second half hour about how to avoid foreclosure by using a short sale or other possible tools. And Paul's going to be joining us again in the next few weeks, and we'll talk from there. I think, Lynn, are you there, Lynn?
Yes. Hello,
What's
Carl.
going on? Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. I have a question about a DUI.
Okay.
I got knocked off a number of years ago for DUI, and I got on an ARD program.
Okay.
Now, some folks that I know that are computer savvy, which I am not, they checked and determined that my record was still intact or something, and it was never expunged. And do I have to file something else with an attorney to get my name cleared then, or how's that work?
Well, it depends on what county your DUI was in and what they were doing at that particular time, because I can tell you, for instance, Franklin County does not automatically expunge people's ARDs. You have to file your own paperwork after the fact. Cumberland County, on the other hand...
No, it's Lebanon
County,
excuse me.
Lebanon County. And I don't know what Lebanon County was doing at that time or whether they would automatically expunge them or not. If it's still showing, there's a form you can download from the AOPC, although I usually recommend you have an attorney help you with it because some of the questions on it are not straightforward. It's kind of like trying to do your own business tax return. Some of the answers aren't as obvious as you would think.
Is that something that you could help me with?
Absolutely. We do them all the time. So if you go to weekendappointment.com, you can shoot me an email from there or just look at the phone number on there, which is 241-6070. Call in the office and let them know you want to talk to me or one of the guys about getting that cleaned up. And I can tell you an expungement like that isn't going to be that expensive.
Okay, but it's a good route to take?
Yeah, absolutely. And you do want it cleaned up because there's no reason anybody should know about that.
Okay. Cool.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Awesome. 540-0580. Call in. Carl Rominger here live on the air answering your questions from the capital. Not the sunny capital today. The somewhat rainy and cold capital, but it's not icy here. Sandy, are you there, Sandy?
I am here, Carl.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I was a little disappointed with something that you said the other day on Bob Durgan, and maybe I didn't understand what you were saying. I'm not a birther.
Shoot.
I'm not a birther. I'm not that at all. But when you talked in terms of the birthers, I think you called them radicals or you called them wackos.
Right-wing kooks.
Something like that. And then you said, for goodness sakes, just follow your president. That doesn't sound terribly American to me either. I don't understand what follow your president meant. That's where I have a problem. What does that mean?
Okay, go ahead.
What does that mean? What were you saying? Follow your president. What does that mean?
I'm saying that we have a president. He's the commander-in-chief, and he's owed a certain level of respect.
Well, sure.
You're
I am military, and of course the military, but as a plain old citizen, the word follow your president, being an attorney, as you are, it seems to me the word follow your president doesn't mean respect. I was just surprised you said it.
No, I think that what I mean by follow your president is I meant people should do what they're supposed to do. They should meet their obligations as American citizens, and they should give respect to their president. And I guess if I said follow, I don't mean follow him into
That's where I had the
sea. But the flip side is, until there's a political solution, if the president says this is the way it is, if he's doing something wholly illegal, there's courts that can redress that and stop that. If he's doing something wholly illegal, Congress can stop him. So,
well, if they're complicit, they won't.
If they're complicit, then it's constitutional.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's constitutional, that's the document I'm sworn to.
Well, not necessarily.
Well, the oath I took when I became a lawyer.
Excuse me?
I raised my right hand and I swore my oath and allegiance to the United States Constitution and to the Pennsylvania Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
And to the extent that something is done lawfully and constitutionally, my allegiance is sworn to it. Doesn't mean I can't poke it, prod it, or test it. But if the president does something and Congress allows it and the court finds it constitutional, that's the end.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Totally
so I guess we're on the same page.
It's just the word that you're to follow your president doesn't sound like that to me. That was it. I was just surprised.
And I'll tell you why the birthers... Okay, I'll let you go.
I'm not a birther. But
no, I was going to say the reason the birthers drive me wild is they're like, oh, John McCain, he's born on a boat. That's no big deal. But for some reason, Barack Obama's got to have 5 forms of ID, to prove that he was born to a white American woman who was a citizen.
I sort of disagreed with you as well when you were speaking in terms of birth certificates and the provability of your birth. I think you went overboard. I mean, what you're saying is basically you're not sure your son's your son. And I think
well, you can't prove it. How do I prove it?
You have gone way overboard. There are levels of proof.
Did you know that there are something like 400 or 500 million people in India who have no identity that they can prove whatsoever because there is no record of their birth?
And that's a shame, but that's India. And
no. Here in America, for most
America, and I would
for most of the years here in America, most people don't actually have a birth certificate anymore. If you're 82 years old, 2 neighbors might have signed on a piece of paper that was stored at a local office, which was later discarded.
And he was born in the hills of Arkansas, and he actually has one. So what I'm saying is...
So that proves that there are not... But there are tens of millions of people in the United States who could not produce a long-form birth certificate for no other reason that the records weren't maintained.
I can understand what you're saying, but I think you have to really stretch it to prove this point.
So let me ask this question. Are you saying, and this is why my question for everybody is, are you saying that Barack Obama's mother was not a U.S. citizen?
I'm not saying anything.
So he's natural born. So it's a simple question. The 14th Amendment says...
I could care about Barack Obama. My conversation with you is not about Barack Obama. I could care less about him. It has nothing
Well, he's
to
the
do
president.
With
you have to have some loyalty to him.
He's my president, of course. I mean, I'm not talking about the birther bit. I'm not a birther. I
understand.
What I'm saying to you is the position that you took and the length that you had to go. I just think that...
I stand behind my position, and I guarantee you there are tens of millions of people who could not prove what people are expecting the president to prove.
Your position was basically we can't do it because we can't do it. And
we can't do it. It's unfair to say that you have to go. I got to go to break, so I have to let you go. But feel free to call in next time I'm with Bob, and we'll go a few rounds. All right, got to go to break. 540-0580. 540-0580. Call in right now with your legal questions. Carl Rominger here on Weekend Appointment, WHP 580, answering your legal questions. Broadcasting live from Washington, D.C., and President Obama did cancel his appearance we were going to talk about, and he was going to produce his long-form birth certificate for me. And for that nice lady I was chatting with, I don't want you to think that I think everybody is a kook just because they question that, but the answer is it's so unimportant. It reminds me of the people who come into court and say, Judge, you don't have jurisdiction because this is a court of admiralty because there's a yellow fringe on your flag. And they might have some historical truth to it, and they might have some position, but the judge's jurisdiction, district justice in Pennsylvania's jurisdiction of you certainly does not fail simply because there's a yellow fringe on the flag. And that's what I feel about the birthers. They're kind of a fringe movement. Maybe that's where that term comes from. Okay, Jim, what's going on?
Hey, Carl. This morning on the news, there was a segment that, or the announcement was made that Sarah Palin and her daughter were filing for trademark for their name. And I was wondering, like, any kind of, now she's not a public official anymore, but any kind of public official, like a governor or someone like that, if I were to like make up some campaign buttons, historical in nature, with the names and the dates that they were in office or something like that on there, and just historical facts, can I do that?
Yeah, as a general rule, in fact, if you go check out, it's called the presidentialhatcompany.com, spelled just like it says Presidential Hat Company. They make like a Ronald Reagan hat with the number on it, or they do an Eisenhower hat or a Lincoln hat. I mean, obviously Lincoln's not too concerned about his trademark, but my point being is, yeah, you're absolutely right. Once you're a politician in the public domain, the right to political speech trumps any value you might have. And the thing with Palin, at risk of getting my audience all riled up again, is this goes back to what I said on the Durgan show. She's in it for the money. I mean, yeah, it's pretty obvious.
And so would and anybody who wants to make money at a trade show or something like that. But I'm not necessarily saying a politician, but like a public official. I wouldn't call them all politicians, but there are public officials that aren't. And
we make a distinction. We make a distinction in the law between what's called a high public official and a public official.
Right.
So I'll give you an example. The fact that you are a clerk at the DMV, or maybe even like a mid-level, person in a bigger government, you don't suddenly give up all your privacy rights. Whereas when you're a high public official, which might be the president, but it might also just be the Secretary of State or the Department of the Interior, head of the Department of Interior, or Secretary of the Prisons for a state. You get to a certain level where you've sort of given up your privacy rights at the same level a low official would have.
Yeah. Well, if I were to just go with historical facts and have to have that name in there as part of the historical fact, is that illegal to use somebody's name like that they're living now, but not not anyone in the past?
That's an interesting question. I'll give you an example. There's a guy named Taylor, okay? And he now makes wine called Bully Hill.
Okay.
Now, you must have heard of Taylor Wineries, right?
Yeah.
And so he lost the right to use his name. I think Seagram's or somebody had bought out the Taylor wine name, and they bumped his own name off his bottle. And his big fight in the federal courts was, it's just my name. I make wine. My name's Taylor, and it's Taylor Wines. And they said, sorry, you're infringing on the trademark.
Yeah.
So now he's Bully Hill. So my point on that is to point out that, even it's a fine line. I mean, if it's historical, you might be okay. I guess to the extent, though, that it isn't. So you can't trademark, for instance, the word Pennsylvania because it's the name of a state.
Right.
But you might be able to trademark Pennsylvania cheese or...
Right. I understand that, but I'm talking about something historical that has happened on down the line with several people, and I want to put out coffee cups with this fact on it, and I have to use different names and different dates, this century, last century on it, and I was wondering if those people were still around. Could they come back and say, hey, you got to stop that?
For the most part, I don't think so.
Okay.
But I would sit down with a trademark attorney and look at each specific example of what you want to do just to see if there's any problem. The other thing is you can always take the position of, I don't think this is infringement, in a good faith, and if you get stuck in a battle later on, whether you're in good faith or not is an important element.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So seeking out opinion of a written opinion at length would probably be in your best interest. All right?
Yes. Hey, thanks.
Thanks.
Yep.
All right, man. I think I have another Jim on the line.
Hi, Carl.
Hey, Jim. Let me just remind people it's 540-0580. All right, sorry about that, Jim. What's going on?
Oh, hey, no problem. Thank you for taking my call. Hey, I've been trying to take care of a legal issue for my agent folks, and it has to do with an attorney and possible either malpractice or intentional malpractice, or just for legal smarts on the guy's behalf. And I've spoken with a couple of attorneys, and they seem to be nobody wants to touch this malpractice thing with a 10-foot pole, it seems. And almost like an attorney does not go after another attorney. So what's happened now is I've been told that you probably want to go directly to the state bar and to the ethics commission there. I guess, I don't know if I'm using the right term. But how does that
disciplinary
work
board?
You know, a private individual, a layman to take something like that to an ethics.
You fill out a complaint form that they have on their website, and it's on the PA Disciplinary Board. If you just type Pennsylvania Disciplinary Board Attorney into Google, you'll find it. You fill out a form there, and then they kind of, ask you kind of state what you think happened, and then they go to the attorney and ask for their side, and then based on that, they decide whether to launch an official investigation or whether to close the matter. I can tell you that a lot of them, a lot of times, they may come to the conclusion that there's nothing unethical that was done. Doesn't mean that it wasn't malpractice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I should add that this is out of state. I don't know if it makes a difference state to state.
Yes, every state has its own disciplinary system and its own way of doing it. So you'd have to. What I would do is get in touch with go to the website of the highest court of that state. So in Pennsylvania we have the Supreme Court, right? But in New York the Supreme Court's the trial court. So the appellate division is higher. My point being is just figure out what the highest court in that state is, and work your way down through their website or the state's bar association's website. And either one usually will point you towards the disciplinary procedures and how to initiate a complaint.
Okay. Well, the latest attorney that I spoke with in that state, he's the one that said, hey, here's my opinion on it. It does look like something happened here, but I have no interest in pursuing this in a malpractice way. I would have to send you directly to the state bar. And actually, I did sit down with one of your folks in the Carlisle office, and where I say that it seems nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole is I shared this information with this gentleman in your office, and honestly, Carl, I haven't been able to get a call back or an email. And
shoot me an email.
Shoot back with an opinion on it, and it hasn't come. And I'm just wondering, is it just because attorneys don't?
Yeah, shoot me an email. Well, shoot me an email on that, and I'll give me a few more details, and I'll find out what we did. Maybe we did shoot you an email. It's in your spam folder. I don't know, but we'll get to the bottom of it.
Okay, I appreciate that. Okay.
Yeah, but go to Weekend Appointment. My email's Carl@Rominger, which is on there. But just shoot me an email with a couple details, and I'll get back to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, brother. Oh, yeah, and by the way, attorneys suing attorneys, I do have a lawsuit going against an attorney in Lebanon County right now. So, attorneys will sue attorneys. It just has to be a little more clear-cut a lot of times than what people would think. Sometimes it's like doctors in medical malpractice. A lot of people think a bad result is malpractice. And unfortunately, the possible outcomes in a legal matter and just like in a medical matter are so widespread that the only question isn't the outcome. But the question is, would a reasonably prudent doctor or attorney have done whatever the other one did that you're complaining of? 540-0580, Carl Rominger broadcasting live from D.C. Seth. Oh, Mike.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, what's going on?
Hey, I just want to comment on the lady a couple calls ago. The whole birther thing, personally, I didn't vote for Obama, but he is the president. I understand that. But at the same time, you want our respect. Well, this thing could have ended 6 months ago. Call Hawaii and get your birth certificate. Show it.
Yeah, I understand that theory, but here's the flip side. Why? He says, you want to question it, you prove it, and then everybody spends all their time.
Office. You're the president of the country. Don't you think you kind of owe us? Just end it.
Do we? The short answer is he's also a politician, as are all political people. There were questions. Well, wait a minute. Stop. I can guarantee you that if you and I sat down, we can go through, and I'm sure we can find for each politician, and we'll go with every president, where there was a call for them to release something publicly and they chose not to. And here's how it breaks out. Are you ready? When it was Ronald Reagan who was asked, the Democrats were upset he wouldn't, and the Republicans said he was just, maintaining his privacy. When it was Bill Clinton, the Republicans were upset, and the Democrats said he was just maintaining his privacy. You see a pattern here? And my point is,
to me, it's just silly though. It's like it's just another game.
Well, but here's the point: it's a game for both sides.
Whatever they want.
It's a game for both sides because the people who are frothing at the mouth and spending all their time on this and actually wasting time, and most of the states are insolvent right now, okay? Yeah. And they're actually wasting time on passing a bill designed to force Obama to disclose his birth certificate because that's the most important thing they can come up with. When Pennsylvania's going to be $3 billion in the hole, New York's going to be $8 billion in the hole, California. My point is,
I agree.
It's craziness. It's political craziness on both sides.
And they do it both ways. If it were
right.
Democrat, the Republicans were doing it. But to me, I would think he would just man up and say, look, here it is. Okay?
Listen, I come back to this. He should just say, listen, don't you think Hillary and Bill vetted me pretty well? Because otherwise you'd know about it. If I wasn't a citizen, that would have been out there already.
I agree with you. I have no problem. I think he is a citizen, be it he was born on this soil or not. But to me, It's like we're wasting so much time on it. Just,
right, I agree.
If I were him, I would come out on TV and say, look, we have more important things to do than talk about where I was born, if I am, if I'm not. Here it is. Let's move on. And I personally would have a lot more respect for him. And like I said, I didn't vote for him. But I would personally say, you know what? He's starting to show it.
I got to go to break because Shane's yelling at me in my earpiece here. But I completely appreciate that. And all I say is just like my mom used to say, it takes two. And so either side should be who's going to back down first. And, of course, in politics, neither side will. And the reality is Obama's laughing all the way to the bank on this again because
definitely.
He'll just wait. You watch. Mark my words on this. He'll wait until it's, right before the next election. And when they start finally frothing at the mouth, he'll hand out the birth certificate and say, see, I told you so, you dum-dums.
Yeah. And like I said, we have more important things to do. All right. Thank you for your time.
All right, man. Got to go to break. 540-0580. Hey, I'm back. 540-0580. And, hey, this remote unit sometimes gets a little fuzzy, so if I fade in or I fade out or I disappear completely, we can always go to the cell phone backup. Right, Shane? Okay, let's see. I got Seth.
Hey, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. What's going on, brother?
Hey, about a while back, you were talking about car insurance and like the whole full tort option and whatnot. You were filling in for Bob, I think.
Yeah.
And basically, I didn't have full tort on my vehicle, but that was like a personal policy. I am self-employed, and then I looked into getting a commercial policy, and for commercial policy, full tort's mandatory. But long story short, the yearly premium was almost 50% less than the personal policy. And I was wondering if in the future, if I get employed by somebody else, would it be an issue to maintain the same commercial policy on my vehicle, even if I'm not, quote, self-employed anymore, transferring tools and whatnot?
I don't know the answer to that. My suspicion is that when you sign that policy, you certify certain things, and one of them you're probably certifying is that you legitimately are employed. Now, if you have a truck and I guess you do landscaping on the side and you keep doing that even after you become employed by another business, you may still have a legitimate need for a commercial policy. But I would talk that over thoroughly with my agent.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say it's fine, I would get it in writing from them.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I did. I got some commercial policies, and I looked at the cost per vehicle, and I'm like, why is it cheaper to have some guy driving around in a? Okay, yeah. See what I was talking about with this crazy thing? Jason, you're up. Hey, Jason.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, got a couple of questions here for you. First, I just wanted to thank you, man. You really changed my whole outlook on what a lawyer's supposed to be and the whole stereotype on that. First question for you. I'm in a business here. I actually install cable, and sometimes I go down to the outer edge of Maryland, back up into PA. One of these trips, I happened to be coming down, and here there was a local cop sitting there, and down there, the locals can use radar. Well, right where he was shooting, actually shot me in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, but literally the sign on the other side of the street said 25. He pulls me over, says, you're going this fast, 25, and this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to fight this. I said, what do I do? He said, don't pay. We'll send you, the court date and all that. 2 months later, I hear nothing. I figure certified letter, something of that nature. all of a sudden I get a letter from PennDOT. I'm going to lose my license due to the fact I have not taken care of this citation. I call up and to inquire about it. They're telling me I've got to pay the whole amount since I missed my court date, yada, yada, yada. But yet they never sent, I never received anything in the mail. It was never a certified thing sent there, and I really felt that I had a strong case.
Right.
Now, are these points, now I decided to try to go and do it and pay it full. Am I going to have points transferred if I go ahead? Because I'm a commercial driver's license. I no longer use it. Is that going to be something that's going to stick on my record there? Or
It potentially can, and I don't know, but most speeding charges will carry between states and will sit there on your permanent driver's record. In fact, a client of mine was just getting a commercial driver's license individual on his hiring him at his company, and he got a hard time from the workers' compensation insurance to set a rate on him because they said he had been suspended once. Well, it turned out that was like 15 years prior when he was 19. He was suspended once for underage drinking, which had nothing to do with his driving. And he had 2 speeding violations, like 10 years before. and he's like, how can that possibly count against? And what you find out is, as a commercial driver's license holder or anybody who's planning on ever getting one, you're best to clean up all your traffic matters as best you can. Now, in Maryland, I don't know how you could reopen that. I know up here in Pennsylvania, we could reopen what we call nunc pro tunc to say that. So I'm not sure if how much you caught me there. How far did I get?
Some of it. But anyhow, that's the basic. And I had called PennDOT and they said the points will not transfer, so I'm kind of happy about that. And then I have a second part question. Actually, I wanted to ask you about if I have time for that. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead, shoot.
Okay. Currently I am in I pay child support between my ex. She's not letting me see my daughter, blah, blah, blah. Never had a problem. There's no issues. She's actually kind of not an upstanding citizen, the people she surrounds herself with. I'm trying to just see her, and she will not allow me to do that. Now, I guess I can't just go to family court. I would have to be represented by an officer of the court. Now, is that correct?
Oh, okay. 540-0580. And we had to switch from our Comrex to the cell phone, so we'll see what happens here. Okay, who have I got next? It looks like maybe Joseph? Oh, sorry about that. I think what happened is you're in D.C., you're talking about the birthers, you're talking junk on the president, and he's probably scrambling my signal. So what's going on, Joseph?
Okay, I would first of all thank you so much for your contribution to the community.
Great, thank you very much.
I would like to ask, generally speaking, about collection agencies, what can they do and what they cannot do. And I will just make a short statement. I think that people have to pay their bills. But if there is a dispute, if there is an honest dispute, and I write them, I dispute, and I send it to the collection agency and to the whoever sends me or whoever thinks that I owe the money, I say, look, this is the bill. I don't think that it's right, and this is my reason. They don't stop on red. They continue with the collection agency, and even if I write second time and third time, I dispute this bill. They don't stop, and then they go to my credit report. Is there anything that I can do?
Yeah, there's something called the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, which does limit what they can do and also requires them to do investigations. One of the criticisms has been that these, quote, when you dispute a debt, they don't actually do a real investigation. What you really usually want to do is go back to the person who created the original debt notice. In other words, if you owe Visa money or you think you have a dispute with Visa and it's a collection agency that's trying to collect it, you don't want to deal with the collection agency. You want to get an attorney to go back to Visa and say, listen, you guys put this out for collections. You're violating the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act. He doesn't really owe you what you claim because they have a more vested interest in trying to straighten things out than the collection agency does, because guess what? If collection agency straightens things out, then they might not have anything left to collect.
Yeah.
And so I don't feel, I'm speculating a little bit here, but my impression from having dealt with them for clients before is going to the primary creditor is always in your best interest because they actually have a reason to resolve it.
I'm trying, and let's say if this is some kind of a deal for a medical service, and I say no, I was not there, or no, it was not a service, it was a different service, and I'm writing a letter, but they do not. I would say they do not respect that there is maybe a point. They just continue using their collection agency, and in my case, they just went to my credit report, so I have to kind of make a complaint or a note in my credit report and so, but it's useless because once I go to the bank, they see that there is some kind of an issue.
And what we would recommend you do is get together with an attorney and do something to try to scrub that, which is to go back and prove that there was erroneous billing, et cetera, and then try to clean that up from the source. Joseph, I'm going to let you go because I'm going to take 2 callers before I get off the air here.
I appreciate that.
Joseph. Yeah, Joseph's got a good point there. Common problem. 540-0580. Carl Rominger here on WHP 580 live from Washington, D.C. If you get a chance and you want to hear my interview with Dan Ray from WBZ out of Boston the other night, it's posted on weekendappointment.com. We talked with Boston callers about what to do when the police pull you over. And for people who don't know, Dan Ray, who has Nightside up there, is a licensed attorney. So we had a great conversation and a lot of good calls. They talk funny up there, though. Patty, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. What's going on?
My question for you is, what right does our employers have to force drug testing if you have an accident at work?
The short answer is I believe if there's an accident at work, workers' compensation law allows the employer to get you drug tested, and workers' compensation law is very harsh. If you're under the influence of drugs, then they don't have to pay workers' compensation.
Okay. What if you have an accident but there's no injury that occurs?
That's interesting. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I know that there are some restrictions on employer drug testing, but I suspect from the employer's standpoint, the happening of an accident is going to trigger their right to do it. And here's why I think this. Because a lot of times injuries aren't known immediately at the time of the accident. It's not unusual for somebody, for instance, to be in a car accident or have something drop on them at work and say that they're fine, and then 10 days later, 1 day later, or 2 years later, decide that injury somehow is responsible for their current medical condition. And so I would suspect, again, under workers' compensation law, I would have a right as an employer because your immediate medical need isn't going to be known.
I see. So really, it's not a violation of any civil rights or anything?
I don't think so. And, the answer is the employer has a right to protect themselves from spurious workers' compensation claims, and the law says that if you were under the influence, so we see these quite commonly in fatalities, for instance, when somebody falls off a building, let's say, one of the first things they'll do is look at the tox screen. Now, it's not the presence of the drug, by the way, or the metabolite that's the issue. Unlike DUI law, where the legislature has made it a crime to drive 2 weeks after you smoke the joint and there's hardly anything left in you metabolite-wise and nothing's been active in you for weeks, the workers' compensation law is a little more rational and says you have to be under the influence of these drugs. And so quite frequently, toxicologists are brought in to say, okay, here's how much of this was in him, here's how much of that was in him. That tells us he hadn't smoked a marijuana joint in 3 days, so he probably wasn't under the influence, for more than a few hours after he smoked it, so it's got nothing to do with it, so you got to pay your claim.
I see. Okay. All right. That answers my question.
All right. Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
And, of course, we're live from D.C. today. We'll be back in studio next week, and we'll also be doing a bonus podcast edition at that point. Sammy, you're on the air.
Hi, Mr. Rominger. I heard. By the way, I heard you on the Dan Ray show.
Oh yeah, how was that? You like it?
It was very good. The only thing is, you sound a little tired.
They had me on in the middle of the night. I mean, night's time.
What's that?
They had me on in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's true. You really get around. What do you have, a jet? Here in Washington, then earlier in the week you were in Boston?
Boston was by telefancy. I mean, today I'm in D.C. I came down to consult on this Cairo problem for the president. So hopefully we'll have everything solved by Monday.
Oh, beautiful. Hey, the reason I called is that I have a plan and a patent to modernize the old steam engine. And one of the big advantages of this is that engine will burn everything, and in addition to that, it's green. It can be made totally green. Now, I called and sent a letter to the Department of Energy, and they tell me they have some grant money available, and they put me through their websites. But when I got on there, I became totally confused. They got so many different forms. Is there somebody in your office that can help me get through all this red tape and so I can a presentation?
The short answer is yes. Eric David in my office is the guy you probably want to talk to. He knows the most about those sorts of issues, and certainly would be more than willing to, I'm sure, help shepherd you through that system. It's kind of complicated, and I know, anything that they create in terms of forms just get more and more complicated all the time. So I'm sure you have a lot of hoops you have to jump through if you want to get something, federal funds for a patent idea like that.
Yeah, originally, I gave them a plan and an idea, and I told them we could have this thing on the road within a year.
Well, Sammy, good luck with that, and contact Eric in my office. I got to let you go. Got to say goodbye here. All right, folks, thanks for listening. As you know, make sure you go to weekendappointment.com. I know a lot of you have claimed your free wills, and a lot of you haven't. I do them every week, but I want to make sure if you haven't got a power of attorney yet, you haven't got a living will yet, but if you want a free regular will, you go to weekendappointment.com, you download the kit, you send it in, and it works great. We've had literally, I don't know, hundreds of people do this, I think, over the last couple of years. I do a few at a time, but it adds up. And I really appreciate the fact when people come in, I get to meet them, get to learn a little bit about who listens to the show. That's the other exciting part for me. As you guys know, I really do enjoy doing this. And so make sure you go to weekendappointment.com and become a registered member. Of course, you can also see our videos there. And hopefully there'll be some music coming here that tells me when we're done. And I don't know whether Shane's going to pop that up or not yet. But go to weekendappointment.com, register, download the free will kit, and we will go from there. And as soon as the music comes up, I'm going to go because I'm going to enjoy Washington, D.C.